Let's get to the story of the day. Story 1. The following incident occurred in the summer of 1988. I hit the water with incredible force as I flew from the boat. As the sound of the outboard engine blades got closer, my ears rang with echoing terror. The bow of the boat pounded my right side, leaving me motionless and gasping for air. As the boat pushed through me, clearing its path in the icy waters, I spun uncontrollably. I was motionless, unable to move or breathe, oblivious to up and down. When I felt something solid cushion me from beneath, I realized I was at the bottom of the lake. My mind immediately began to overload, and an indescribable sense of terror set in. My mouth opened and I gasped for air, only to swallow a large amount of water. I could feel it rush into my body, take over and claim its new territory. I closed my eyes and realized that my ego had been completely stripped as a result of my forced acceptance of the situation, my interpretation of the feeling and effect, that is. A sense of calm surrounded me now, as if I were coming to terms with a lifelong event that had ruled me for so long. I accepted my powerlessness. It was what it was, and I didn't need anything else. I then moved to another location with ease. I found myself in a void, which I can only describe as an endless plane of nothingness, as if space were devoid of stars and planets. I didn't have a physical body and saw through something other than my eyes. Everything appeared to be coming from or existing from the same complete source that I appear to be a part of right now. I was no longer aware of or needed to be aware of the mechanics of what was going on because everything was accepted for what it was and existed as. I was immediately inundated with information that came at me from all sides and across multiple dimensions, or so it seemed. The information came at me like the final stages of a marathon. It was perfecting the harmony of which I was now a part. It was as if my being had become a vacuum, opening up and swallowing everything that had ever been or would ever be inside to enter. The information retention was over in what seemed like the blink of an eye. At this point, I can only do my best to explain what happened because words fall far short of the actual sensation. I'll do my best to explain it this way. I now understood everything that had ever been or would ever be. I didn't have to think about or even question anything else. I was complete. I had attained what I considered to be the highest level of peace that could ever exist, because my mind was silent and I was simply being and nothing more. I was a part of everything that ever was, and as such, I had no expectations or thoughts. I existed within everything with no form or shape, just a completely perfect state of being. I bobbed to the surface of the lake. A whisper of breath returned to me. My eyes opened and I was a different person. I had no change or enlightened feeling after this experience. I did, however, recall the event, and for a brief moment, everything appeared to be polished up. The world was much more colorful. For the next 3 years, I was obsessed with determining the source of the feeling I had during the experience. After finding no answers, I quickly fell into a deep depression. I had decided to end my life at this point due to the severe anxiety I was experiencing. I called my father and apologized for what was about to happen. After hanging up the phone, I collapsed to the floor and saw myself beneath me. I was then transported to a plane, high up in the sky, a bright place with no effect on my vision. I had no physical form and could see in 360 degrees. I moved, or floated, into a wooden structure that appeared to be a massive hall filled with hundreds of people. They paid no attention to me as I moved past them to the right along the east wall. I was drawn to a large framed picture of what we now call Christ. I noticed small circular colors bouncing off the walls directly in front of me and all around me right away. I started looking around and noticed that everyone had risen and was looking to the north. The colors were incredible now, with millions of them dancing and weaving together to form a massive single source emitting a white, bright pearl color. As I started to look for the source, which appeared to be on my right based on the people's reactions, some opposing, gentle force stopped me. It was as if I knew this was all too real at that precise moment. I felt anxiety enter me at this point, but it was quickly silenced by a source that seemed to caress me, as if a hand had been placed beneath my existence. I began to be dragged back, unable to turn far enough to see the source. I started going for the source. Nothing else mattered at that point except getting there. I was then contacted and informed that this was not my time. I was told that what I was going through didn't matter. This was communicated to me directly through my subconscious, not through words. What mattered was that I recognized the experience for what it was, an experience. This is how I explain it best. I was standing on a life cliff with only two options: jump or take a step back and reevaluate the situation. The source simply explained that neither was the solution. The solution was to understand it was nothing more than an experience, and the cycle would be complete. With that, I exclaimed and took a deep breath, sitting up immediately and returning to my physical body. My anxiety had subsided, and I had a newfound appreciation for life. The world gleamed once more as if all the colors had been polished. I could smell it and feel its presence. I brushed up against plants and trees, sensing their presence and, I believe, their emotions. My compassion for life and all living things skyrocketed. I gained previously unknown knowledge and am now able to perceive life from a completely different perspective. My perception remains much broader, and my information retention has been incredible, having learned most aspects of current technology with no formal education. There's not much more to say, but I can only hope that this has inspired everyone who reads it. I've kept this experience hidden for so long and now want to share it with everyone. I am not afraid of death, and I'm confident that the transition will be painless. Many things about life and its inner workings have become clear to me. We know when our time will come. We're simply not present. For example, things slow down, almost come to a halt, as if the movie we're watching slows down and we can see it frame by frame. At this point, we're going through an index as if to determine if this is our time. The body knows, as does the wholeness of the being, and if it is time, death occurs, seamless to the body. If the time is not right, the body goes through the experience and the movie slows down. With your help, I hope to write about the insights I've gained and share them with you all. I'm hoping to meet a kind being who can guide me along the way. Story number 2. I went to see my doctor the day before my NDE because I was having trouble sitting. When he checked my rectum, he discovered a big abscess. I was promptly sent to a surgeon who arranged an operation for the next day. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt my spirit leave my body and saw myself laying there. I was startled by the event, so I tried to rouse my spouse, but he didn't wake up. I was in my bathroom the next day, giving myself enemas in preparation for my rectal surgery, when I spotted blood in the toilet. As I stood up, I became quite tachycardic, a heart rate that is faster than normal, and terrified, as if my body was dying. I became severely short of breath and realized I was going to die. I began to pray because I didn't want my children to find me dead in the bathroom, and then I felt this sense come over me, like I could die if I just let go, and I felt very much at peace. Even still, I resolved not to give in, and I reasoned that if I lay in the bathtub, I would be able to rest and not become very excited. So I climbed into the bathtub, and while I lay there, I felt my spirit leave my body again, and I saw myself sitting in the tub. This freaked me out again, and I climbed out of the tub because I didn't want my children to discover me dead in the bathtub. I crept to the phone and dialed my neighbor's number, asking her to please come over and assist me in getting dressed. She came over, and I was weak but fine, so I walked downstairs with her assistance. My father-in-law then arrived to drive me to my procedure. When I was in the outpatient surgery center, they attempted but failed to start me an intravenous drip. They then put a blood pressure cuff on my arm, but it didn't work. I laughed and informed the nurse that it had to be a mistake. When the anesthesiologist arrived, I felt compelled to tell him not to let me die. I recall him looking at me as if I were insane. As they placed the monitor on me, I noticed the heart rhythm VTAC, Ventricular tachycardia is a rapid heart rhythm that originates in one of the ventricles of the heart and is a potentially life-threatening arrhythmia. I immediately checked on my blood pressure monitor and noticed that it was 40 and decreasing. The anesthesiologist became agitated and began running about the room, and then my spirit left my body, and it seemed like I was pulled out of my body like a vacuum. My spirit flew out of the hospital and into space. It felt like a scene from Star Trek. My spirit was moving quickly, and I could see the earth underneath me, as well as the stars. Then I heard a thump, and I landed in this incredibly hazy place, surrounded by deceased individuals that I had formerly cared for as a nurse. They all smiled as they welcomed me. They parted, and my father, who had died 6 months before, approached me. I recall how delighted I was since I adored my father and he had died. My father grinned, took my hand in his, and led me to a tunnel. When I arrived in front of the tunnel, a beautiful light shone upon me, and I felt no pain and this incredible love that spread inside of me. I entered the tunnel, and there stood in the midst of it a guy clad in white with long hair, his back to me. I felt immense love from this person, and I knew if he turned around and looked at me, I'd be dead. There was a wonderful location beyond this mountain. The colors were vibrant and vivid. It appeared to be a paradise, except the colors were alive, and the rocks, sky, grass, and water all appeared to be so extremely beautiful, and they all seemed to interact with one another. I watched my life rush before me like a fast-paced movie, and I witnessed all the wonderful and horrible things I'd done in my entire life. Then I heard 3 different voices. "You can stay, or you can leave," they said. And I told myself, I can stay, or I can leave. "I'm not good enough to be here," I answered. And the voices replied, "Oh, but you are." The sounds were so gentle, and the prospect of staying was so appealing to me, and I wanted to stay with my father, but I felt a tug on my shoulders. It seemed to be pulling at me, and I knew instantly that it was my family's, my children's, prayers, and I said, "I've got to go." I blasted out of the tunnel and flew through the universe at that moment. I was back in my body when I heard a thump. "Anne, why didn't you tell me you were so sick?" my doctor remarked, kneeling over me. "You went into cardiac arrest. We resuscitated you and completed the surgery without anesthesia, but you're likely to die due to septic shock." "Oh no, doctor," I answered. "I was in heaven and got to return, so I won't die." I was hospitalized for 6 months and had 5 procedures. I became septic several times, but I always recovered.